Hey, NC.
Hey, NC. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. Not bad. So today's podcast for all you folks listening is going to be a little different. I had a friend of ours, Gorman Bechard, who rolled into town, but he rolled into town at a time when Shannon couldn't be here, so he and I just kind of hung out and shot the breeze. So we're gonna let you hear that, and it actually is pretty cool because and very local. I don't know if many people know who Gorman is by name, but he's the gentleman who put out that documentary, Color Me Obsessed, about the replacements, and one called Everything about Grant Hart, and he's done a number of these.
Didn't he do like a documentary on Archers of Loaf?
That's where I was going. Yeah.
Okay.
He did Archers of Loaf, a live show. He did that.
Yep. I remember seeing that. I think I was there at one of the shows.
Yes, we met him and hung out.
No.
Oh, one of the shows that he was filmed?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, that was prior to us getting together.
Was it a good show? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I would say the person that I attended with was not the best date.
Well,
but yeah, it was a great show.
We'll
Archers of Loaf,
yeah,
always puts on a good show. And I hadn't seen them in a while. I want to try to remember. I think it was in 2011. Yeah, so it was right before we met.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have to watch it again to see if you're in it then.
Oh no, I remember I was kind of in the back.
Oh, okay.
I had gone to a wedding that day and went to see Archers that night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you had a full day.
It was a full day. Huh. And it was one of those weddings where it had a part A and a part B.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like the wedding and then the reception?
Yeah, and there was lag time, like hours of lag time. So I was able to go home, take a nap, change clothes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
A tiered wedding affair, huh?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Gorman has a huge connection to North Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm curious when he's gonna just get a second home here, set up shop.
Well, the thing that we're going to be, you're going to hear a little bit about is he is finishing up a project with a documentary on Sarah Shook and the Disarmers.
Yep.
So that, I think, will come out probably, I think he said the timing was going to be, sometime after her next record comes out, which right now is tentatively scheduled for the spring. So we had a good talk.
And he just did his...
The one, Lydia Loveless.
Who is now, I hear, residing in North Carolina.
Right, yeah, not too far away. Yeah. So maybe we'll be able to have her on at some point when she gets back into the swing of things. I think she's kind of taking it easy right now.
Well, she just played 2 shows.
Yeah, I think she's trying out a bunch of stuff. Yeah, we were going to try and go, but we were a little too slow and everything sold out on us.
Yeah.
But Gorman said that she's going to be trying out a bunch of new material, so that'll be pretty cool. And since it was just her, and I think her guitarist, I want to say like Larry May or something like that, was a part of it. So it was a very stripped down affair. Yeah.
So this podcast is probably going to come out on Christmas Day.
Right.
So I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
And
hope you're having a good time with your loved ones.
Hope you're, and don't eat too much. Don't make yourself sick.
Yeah, I've been doing that already.
Enjoy your time with your family.
Yeah, I know. Are you excited? Are you excited for Christmas? See what Santa brings you?
Yeah, I'm totally excited. I love Christmas. I love the gaudiness of it, the tinsel, the lights.
The white Christmas tree.
I like presents, but honestly, I like Thanksgiving holiday more because it's less presents. The presents kind of stress me out a little bit. Just because, I feel like it's just one more thing to do. Thank God for Amazon Prime and I can just do online shopping. But then I feel super guilty not, getting supporting local businesses
Well, we've done that too. But
yeah. But I mean, you know what I mean.
No, it's Amazon is like that devil's bargain, where you're like, well, this is great, it's convenient, and I can get everything and get it all done and save some time, and I'm already busy because I'm working and I've got this and I've got that, so boom, But then you're like, oh man, especially when you read those stories about working in the Amazon distribution facilities and stuff, it doesn't sound like a lot of fun, and you hate to like be that person, but sometimes it is the devil's bargain, so well, is there something you wanted to talk about today? What do you got?
What do I have? Gosh, I don't know. I kind of feel like just kind of chaotic in my brain, like so much going on, so much trying to keep track of that I'm not being very present. Play with the presents. Yeah. Let's see. What do I have to talk about? I don't know. It's been a lot of holiday parties this week. Work's kind of crazy right now for me.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to seeing Star Wars on Friday. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it sucks, or oh, it's predictable. And it's like, I mean, I still love it. I don't know if it's because, it kind of came out when we were kids. And, I mean, I love it. So I don't care. I like going to the movies, and I'm looking forward to seeing Star Wars. I don't care about your opinion.
All right. Yeah, no,
everybody has an opinion. And that's fine.
We
don't have to agree.
That's right. We're all our own.
But I mean, it's a movie. It's entertainment. Right. It's not some like heavy stuff that I'm supposed to process and bring forth the meaning of life. I mean, I am there to be entertained. As long as it entertains me, I'm good.
Yeah, it's funny. Because I feel, especially as I've gotten older, I have a much more transactional relationship with movies. Like I kind of want to go and lose myself. There's plenty, like you're saying, plenty going on in the brain. Man, I don't
escape.
I don't need gritty
for like
reality.
2 to
sometimes.
3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I live gritty reality. So it's nice to just be able to sort of set aside all that and look at stuff blowing up and sci-fi and things like that. I mean, there are definitely movies that I'm excited about. The new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, like I was telling you about, with the Daniel Day-Lewis.
I'm excited about A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah. But I also like just pure escapism. And,
For sure.
It's nice to get away, and it's also what I really like is being able to see the kids kind of experience it and be kind of in awe of all that, because that takes me back to seeing like Star Wars or I don't know, like Close Encounters or something, and just being in that sort of magical kingdom world where all things were possible, and you didn't, at least for me, I worry more about bills and making sure my kids are safe and things like that, and seeing a simple story or maybe good triumphs over evil is kind of nice. I have to be honest with you. Well, there are a couple things I had thought about. One was really kind of exciting for our neighbors to the north, and Virginia. Currently.
Oh, that one vote.
Yes, the one vote.
Yes.
And it's a disservice.
Just goes to show, get out and vote, people. Right. Your vote does count, literally.
And it's 50-50 in the House of Delegates. Now, the state Senate is, I think, still favored for the Republicans, but this means that it's, I guess, you got to look at it, lesser of two evils. Damage gets slowed down significantly because of this tie. Now, there are 2 more races that are still kind of during the recount, but it may affect it. And obviously, if it swings in the Democrats' way, well, then they have control of the House of Delegates. Again, the Senate is not going to be able, is still going to be probably in Republican hands. But it just, like you're saying, it just goes to show how, really since the election of 2016, in which he who shall not be named was elected, there's been a lot of energy. I mean, there are a lot of people that previously had thought that there was just no way that Virginia would undergo this kind of electoral transformation that's happened, and so it's really gratifying, and hopefully between that and Doug Jones, you're going to start seeing more competitive races in places that previously were not competitive and heavily favored, for the Democrats. Did you see the Wake County clerk? I can't remember her name.
That embezzle?
The one that embezzled. She was indicted for $900,000, but they are missing something like $3 million.
Wow.
So yes. Oops. And there's a book out that I just saw an article about called The Senator's Children, I believe, and it's modeled on the Edwards family.
Oh.
And it's all about it's not really, obviously there's those political novels, like All the King's Men or something.
Oh, did I tell you the time that I got called for jury duty, and I was sitting in a room. We were all sitting in a room, and in walks John Edwards. This was before...
He was John Edwards.
Well, no. This was before the scandal.
Right.
And I went up to him and I was like, "I love you and Elizabeth," and then literally the scandal dropped the next month, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
No.
And he was just in his me being in his him as a live person very close to me. He was just so charismatic, just so nice and genuine, and you could just feel the warmth, and it was just I mean, you could just see how you get wrapped up in
sucked
that.
Into it, huh?
Yeah, and actually I got dismissed, but he actually was on the jury.
Did he have really good hair?
Yes. Great smile.
Okay.
Pretty teeth.
They always, what did they call it? Well, before, I guess, after he won the Senate election, but before the Kerry campaign got him with the Brett girl. They used to call him the Brett girl because of his hair.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But
his hair was gorgeous. No, he was just super. I felt like when I said, "John, I really love you and Elizabeth," and he said he touched my hand and then clasped, and he was like, "We love you too," and it was just like, oh my god.
So how do you feel now? How do you feel about John Edwards?
How do I feel about him?
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's complicated, right?
Yeah,
it's complicated with people. I think. He had a lot. He did a lot of good. He came from a good place in that his dad worked really hard. He was trying his best to help those who were disadvantaged, who were vulnerable. He had a wonderful, smart partner in Elizabeth, and you thought everything was perfect, and it obviously wasn't.
Right.
I mean, I hate to sit here and judge people, but I also hate to give people a pass too. It's complicated, right? So I mean, just when you try to break it down, I mean, his wife had cancer, the love of his life had cancer. Who knows if he was cheating on her? I'm not going to judge that. All I know is that he cheated on his wife. He had this other kid.
Right.
I'm sure that was super hard on their family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just
just having those personal things, people can. I don't know. I think when you see people do shit like that, make it be a lesson to you, and you don't even have to be in the spotlight. To take it as a lesson, but just see how one action or one decision can have this ripple effect on your life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I mean, I don't know what his relationship is with his daughter. I'm sure it's complicated, but, I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
I don't want to cast any stones. I mean, I think that when he served... As a politician, he did good. He had great potential. He made some personal decisions that I wouldn't have made.
Right.
And, he kind of fell from that.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think he'll ever be able to do the good he could have done if that didn't happen. So he kind of...
or he had not done it. I mean, it wasn't like just it happened. He did something.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, he couldn't then be a politician or be in the community because this has kind of tainted him.
Oh, terribly so.
It's like he can't do... I mean...
Yeah, in North Carolina, it's like, I just remember that feeling of just really personal betrayal.
Yeah.
You know, that... I mean, obviously, we weren't married to him, and, you know, we weren't his children, but certainly, you know, just that letdown of like, man, what? Come on, man. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, we got to see it because of who he was, you know, the spotlight. But yeah, those choices, I'm sure well, I don't know if he did or didn't, but I would think his choices, he did not consider the impacts that would have fall upon his family.
Right.
You know, and it just shows you, you know, that...
Didn't they lose a son?
Yes, Wade. He was driving. I can't remember. And there was an accident. I can't remember if what happened exactly, so I don't want to say what I think or what I heard. But yeah, you know. But you know, it's interesting. We're talking about this because, you know, there's been a lot of talk recently about how you know, Kristen Gillibrand, who is the senator from New York, who holds the seat that Hillary Clinton once held, was instrumental in sort of organizing this the pressure that led to Al Franken resigning. And she said, you know, and now we need to consider what a Bill Clinton. And people have said, you know, to some extent that Al Franken is paying that bill, that, you know, paying the debt.
Honestly, I don't know where I sit on Al Franken. Yeah. The thing that bothers me with Al is that he hasn't owned it, what he's done. Like, it's like, I did this. Or, I didn't do it. That's not how I remember it. So it's like he's not owning his shit.
Right.
And he's like, oh, well, I'm your pawn. No, you had bad behavior. Right. This is catching up with you. Yeah. You should own it. And you can still do good.
Right.
Do it. You know?
You're just not going to be a senator.
You're not going to be a senator. Right. But honestly, that was his decision.
Yep.
He is the one that ultimately stepped down. People may have forced him, but really, that was his decision. Don't put it on somebody else.
And again,
they may not have liked you, but 6 months down the road or a year, they may have gotten over it because some other controversy could have happened. I don't know where I stand with all of it. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said last time. Bad behavior is bad behavior. Mm-hmm. There are good people that make bad choices and that do some things that are bad. Right. You have to reconcile, is that a good person or a bad person, and how are you going to support them? I mean, I feel like there are some people that I know that are really awesome, that I feel are perfect in my eyes, and if they ever did anything imperfect that maybe I wouldn't have done, I try not to judge them and still see them in that good person light. I mean, it's just, it's these are all your choices. How are you going to reconcile supporting this person? Do you support them? You know, I mean, I feel like also it's, how would you want to be treated? Would you want to be treated with forgiveness and given another opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, you're cutting me off. I've got so much more to say. Don't know how to say it, but we're running out of time.
We're running out of time, that's all I'm going to say. But I would say that, yes, this is the...
Don't get me started, Phil.
This is a season, hopefully, of forgiveness, but yeah.
Let me dust off this soapbox.
Well, we hope everybody is doing well, and you're taking care of yourself, and you're taking care of the people that you love.
Yes, happy holidays.
Right. And for those that don't celebrate Christmas, we hope you're having a happy Hanukkah or a Kwanzaa or whatever you celebrate. Whatever. It's all good.
Enjoy your day.
All right.
there comes a beer on a crown, something to say to the crowd. Cause it built a wall in between us, knock it off. Well, there comes a guy wearing no shoes. God, I can't even die with nothing to lose. Well, he's mad, but I fit out through. 'Cause when I met you, I found relief, and we could be together. But paradise is only for the weak, man. No one goes to heaven. No one goes to heaven. We're at the mercy of men's fever dreams. Every night that doesn't visit me, 'cause God doesn't ever speak to cease. God, I'm coming down there. I thought I would be okay, but everything just happened. Everything is an accident, man. No one goes to heaven. No one goes to heaven. We built a wall in between us. Keep it down, and when I see you at the gate, oh God, it's been forever. But like a stranger, you just turn away, 'cause no one goes to heaven. I found relief, and we could stay together. But paradise is only for the weak, man. No one goes to heaven. No one goes to heaven. No one goes to heaven. Thank you.
And it's like, it's weird because the Sarah Shook now starts off with me doing narration, and it makes me cringe.
No one likes the sound of their own voice, I
Yeah.
think. Okay. All right. And we're here with Gorman Bechard. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast.
My pleasure. It's nice to be in Chapel Hill.
So what exactly are you doing in Chapel Hill?
I'm eating at Lantern.
Eating
like
at Lantern.
as often as possible, and getting some really good coffee from Open Eye. Though I went to Perennial today, which is a cute little coffee shop. But anyway, I am here to. I'm just gonna plug the places that I like in Chapel Hill.
The tourist guide to Chapel Hill.
Yeah. I am here for a couple of things. I'm just getting Lydia Loveless to sign some of the final Kickstarter rewards so I can send those out. And also here, I sort of booked this around her 2 shows at Cat's Cradle, which I'm really looking forward to see. I hear she's going to be doing a lot of new material. And also here to show Sarah Shook and her band the cut of the documentary that I am working on. on the band, and is also to shoot a music video for him.
Very nice. Now, how did you kind of come to know about Sarah?
I was getting notifications of anything about Lydia in my feed, and this article comes up called 5 Women Who Are Kicking Country Music's Ass. And Lydia's on the list, so I'm just looking through it, and I knew everyone else, Margot Price, I think it was Margot Price, Nikki Lane, and one other, maybe Casey Musgroves, I don't remember. And of course Lydia and Sarah Shook. And so the one I don't know, I look up her music and just fell in love with the songs. You know, I mean, to the point where, and this is not an exaggeration, I played the Dwight Yoakam song so much that none of my friends or my wife will allow me to play it anywhere near them. It is literally...
They're victims of the overplay now?
Yeah. I actually drove to Chicago, and in 18 hours, all I played was that record. Over and over again. And to the point where I think Dean, who does a lot of music, Dean Falcone, a friend of mine who does a lot of music for me, he basically, I think he was ready to kill me. You know, like he said, you can't play it anymore. So I would go get the car so we could like load up the gear, and he'd be opening the door, and he's like, "No," it's because drinking water tonight because I drank all the whiskey this morning.
Right.
Booming out of the speakers.
So, did you when you heard it, were you like, "Well, I gotta crank up the documentary train and take it on down"?
I just really, really loved it, and I was actually coming down here for 2 screenings of the Lydia film with Lydia playing afterwards at Cat's Cradle and at Poorhouse in Raleigh. And I said, let me stay an extra day. And I met with Sarah and I said, I think you guys need more exposure. And it's like maybe a good music video will help you. So I volunteered to make them a music video, which I did for the song Heal Me. And I also at that point started talking to her. I said, look, I am looking to do another music doc, but what I really want is it to focus on someone who's really unknown, no record deal, but I want to focus a lot on the actual songwriting. And what I convinced her to do was to actually film herself on her computer as she's writing her songs. Okay. So like, and she would start sending me these clips, and they're just like intimate and wonderful, and it's just her like literally with the Sharpie in her mouth crossing out words, working on parts, and it's like, and a lot of the film is built around that. But my making the music video backfired a little bit because one of the big fans in the music video was Bloodshot Records, and of course it led to the 4 record deal for them, so that sort of killed the part about it not being signed, but. So we sort of had a happy ending before the film was even.
Well, that's good. But I mean, I guess your narrative sort of changed from, unsigned to the journey to and beyond. I mean, because I guess this will be the first record that is initially going to be released by Bloodshot. Right. So things will be changing probably pretty drastically.
Well, no, it changed a lot in that they had to really tour much more, which I think was something they were not used to, and venture out of this. I don't know if it's called the tri-state region here, but South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, which is pretty much where they had done most of their touring. Yeah,
I mean, you can get pretty adept at a small, like your regional circuit, maybe, if that. I mean, regional would almost be more ambitious. I mean, most, when I've managed what was called alt country or whatever, it seemed like, well, you're not going really down to Florida probably. So, but yeah, you would do Georgia, Tennessee, you could go from Atlanta to Chattanooga and things like that. But yeah, it would be like the weekend or the 3-day weekend or something like that. And that was always kind of the jump. Can you go from the 3-day weekend when you still, kind of have your day job and keeping your to something that takes you out of your normal everyday life and puts you kind of, on the moon, which is what it's like being in a van after a while.
And especially when you have other jobs that you need to pay the bills, and you have children or family, and significant others and such. So yeah, I mean, it definitely changes everything.
Now, you initially kind of came to be known for your Replacements documentary, Color Me Obsessed. How did you taking it back a little, what led you to make documentaries?
Well, I mean, I had been, I had done a bunch of horror films in the 80s. I 5 books published in the 90s, tons of options to Hollywood, and nothing ever got made. Right. And I sort of got bored with that, and I wanted to get back into it, and I made a couple of independent films in the early aughts, 2004, 2007. I was in this documentary on the Replacements, and I think Hansi filmed me around 2005 or so. Hansi Oppenheimer, who was the one who originally started it. And around late 2008, early 2009, she wrote to me and said, I can't finish this film. I lost my editing room. I lost, my cut, everything. I have nothing, but I had the original footage. And I said, well, let me look at it. And I started thinking about it. And I knew I would probably have to start over from scratch because a lot of she had never done it before. So one of the big mistakes a lot of first-time filmmakers make in the documentary world is their sound is terrible. And sound is more important than picture when you're making a documentary because you can always cover it with B-roll. But if you don't have the sound, right, forget it. And so I started from scratch, but it was like, I remember, like, literally, I want to do something. This is the band that for its first music video shot a stereo speaker for 4 minutes with nothing else. It was a big FU to MTV. Yeah. And I wanted to do something I wanted to do it in their vein. I wanted to make a music documentary that in my head was going to fail. Mm-hmm. I was going to shoot myself in the foot from day one. Right. And I kept thinking, what am I going to do? And I'm lying in bed drunk one night, and I'm like thinking, I don't believe in God, but I believe in the Replacements. What if I can make people believe in the Replacements like they do in God, never seeing or hearing him, but just the story of all the people that were around them and followed them and right, so forth. Right. And I remember waking up my wife, and she literally said, that's the stupidest effing idea you've ever had.
It's important to value feedback.
Yes. And of course, when the movie's done 2.5 years later, she cries the first time she sees it. But I really wanted to do a film. And it's like, that's about the only thing that annoys me with the film when people say, oh, we probably couldn't afford the music rights. I never asked for music rights. And I was happy when we screened in Los Angeles and Peter Jesperson was in the audience. I said, Peter, stand up and please tell people I never asked you for music. Which you did. And and the other thing too is if I wanted to, I could have just used it for fair use. Every song we discussed, I could have used a 15-second clip, right, for free, right. So it had nothing to do with money. It was just a completely artistic.
Yeah, the artistic conceit was to do it like that. Now, some people it seems to really, offended in some ways. Like, they're not in it. I mean, and there's no music in it, and it's kind of like this group of people that interacted with them. But that's about it, and it kind of seems to be that's like a short-circuiting of expectation.
I think that people aren't used to anything that's different. Right. People are used to. If you went to McDonald's and all of a sudden got something that made you think, right, you'd be like, this is not McDonald's. It's just supposed to be fatty and greasy and disgusting, Right.
This was not how a rock doc's supposed to have that, or the behind the music narrative.
The where are they now VH1 crap. Yeah, and it's like, and I if I ever do one of those, I want someone to shoot me. I've given all of the people who work with me. I've told them if I ever do a VH1 normal rock doc, just put a gun to my head.
Right. Okay. It's on record, even more so now.
Yeah, so they have the right, so they don't need to be arrested. They were doing me a favor, because that would be the thing is, and the same thing when I did the Archers of Loaf. It's funny because I showed my crew certain rock live concert films and said, now this is what we're not doing. Right. And I said, and I show them the only concert film that really matters. Stop making sense. I said, this is what we're doing with the Archers of Loaf, even though it's a completely different thing. And a big thing, the thing that drives me crazy about most concert films is that people are shooting you from straight on. So I'm not looking at the singer's face, I'm looking at a big microphone.
Right.
And if you'll notice that the Archers of Loaf film, almost all of it's shot from the sides.
Right.
Yeah. And everything, just from, I wanted you to feel like you were there, you were about to get hit in the face with Matt Gentling's bass head, and they were sweating on you, like you were literally up against the stage and people were banging against you. And I hopefully accomplished that. I really love that film.
I thought, there's a lot of, kinetic sort of energy coming out of that in terms of the cuts as well as just sort of the basic, like especially Matt's,
Matt's amazing.
Dynamic bass playing, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, how did I know for the Replacements documentary, you were down here and you did some interviewing for some folks.
Yeah.
And is that how your relationship with the Archers kind of?
Oh no, I had been friends with the Archers since the first record.
Oh, since they came through and you were
when
like,
I first saw the Archers was '93, and I had been looking for a decent band since the Replacements broke up. A decent live band. And when they came on the stage, within 30 seconds, I was covered in goosebumps, and I'm like, this is the next band for me.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with them. And I basically just sent them a copy of my book and said, hey, if you guys get as much, like half as much pleasure out of this as that I do out of your music, it was worth sending it. And that was, I just literally, and then I get this handwritten note from like all of them saying that things like, well, we can't believe someone who wrote a book actually listens to us and things like that. And we just sort of became friends.
Okay.
And it was, but they never wanted a documentary about them. And when they reunited, it was actually my wife and Eric's now wife, who we were eating pizza in New Haven. And the two of them sort of talked Eric into it, saying that Gorman's going to do you right.
So at this point, your wife decided that that wasn't the stupidest idea that you'd come up with.
The thing is, she knew how much I love this band. I remember when. Now, Wilco's a band that I also love, and I've seen them 60. We've seen them 60 times since '96 when they first started. I remember coming home one day and she said, I've got good news and bad news. And it's like, okay, well, what's the good news? The Archers of Loaf are reuniting for a tour. I'm like, oh my God, this was like 2011. I'm like, what's the bad news? When they're playing here, it's the same weekend as Solid Sound, the Wilco Festival, which we live for, basically. And I said, tell you what, we'll still go to that. But I'm like, those two shows in L.A., I'm going to go to the two shows in L.A. Which I did. I went to the Troubadour to see them. And that was, after I saw them, it was just like, we have to do this, guys. And that was June. And then we knew there were two shows coming up at the Cradle, set it up with Frank. And it was it was a blast, I remember Sarah was the shooter on Matt Gentling's side. And my note to her was, just try to get something in focus. Because it's like photographing a tornado on the stage.
Yeah, exactly. He moves.
Yeah. And I love her. I mean, her shots of Matt are freaking amazing. I mean, that's rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah.
So what now? The question, I guess, did you sort of pivot from like Minneapolis to North Carolina? That because I know we're both, and obviously your
we
third
keep going
doc
back
was,
and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, was Grant Hart.
Well, I mean, I'm always been of the feeling that after Minneapolis, after the music scene sort of calmed down in Minneapolis, that the great music scene was not Seattle, it was here.
Okay. Well, we were the next Chapel Hill for a while. Or the next, the next Seattle.
Yeah.
No, that was the next Seattle. Well, first we were the next Minneapolis. No, I think first we were the next Athens. Then we were the next Minneapolis. Then we were the next Seattle.
Yeah, I think Seattle was the commercial version. So Superchunk and Archers and Polvo, and I mean, this was like what I wanted to listen to, and then the next thing the thing is, I even knew what I want. I wanted to do a rock documentary that was like Errol Morris's Fog of War, and but I needed one rock star that was smart enough and entertaining enough that you weren't going to want to like shoot yourself in the head after 20 minutes of listening to him talk. So I need one person to carry one film, which is not easy. And I'm in Brussels, Belgium for something called Minneapolis Mon Amour. And it's all these Minneapolis things, including Grant Hart is playing and Color Me Obsessed is playing. And I'm sitting at the hotel. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning, eating the free breakfast. And out of the elevator comes Grant. Gets some food. He sits. We sit there for 3 hours. We talk about everything except music and film.
Okay.
We talk about the Freemasons and the history of aviation and putting his mom and my grandfather in rest homes and and I realized that it's like how smart he was. And so I talked to my producer Jan, who Husker was to Jan as the Replacements were to me. He was the bigger Husker fan. I was the bigger Replacements fan. And we pitched it to Grant, and there you have it. And the funny thing is, though, I think one of the funniest thing is, I sent Grant a copy of the DVD on the cover of which is Robert McNamara in a raincoat.
Right.
And, of course, Grant shows up the first day of filming in the same kind of raincoat and never takes it off. So it's sort of like it was this crazy, he was sort of like a guide through his own life.
Yeah, no, that was quite an interesting documentary. So it's always going to be the Replacements at the top. See, I think Jan and I are very much.
No, it's not. It's actually, if you were to put a gun to my head, say my favorite band in the world, it's Archers of Loaf. Archers of Loaf would be the band that I would take to a desert island.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Not even any hesitation.
Well, that's good, I guess.
Yeah.
Get no hesitation.
I mean, Icky Metal to me is the greatest song ever written.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and not Icky Metal. I mean, Web and Front. And Icky Metal is my favorite record.
Yeah. Well,
I don't even know that the Replacements would be second.
Really?
Yeah.
So is it a? Do you have like this? It's a different kind of love. The Replacements are your first love, but the Archers are kind of like.
No, they weren't even my first. My first love would have been Costello. No, my first love would have been Rod Stewart and the Faces in '72 when I was 12.
Ah, okay. Is that how you think you locked into the Replacements to some extent?
Probably, yeah. But I mean, I think the Replacements to me, just like, okay, so you had Rod Stewart, and then it was sort of like, and then we're getting into 75, 76. And for the most part, most music is horrible at this point. I mean, like, Billy Joel and maybe it's not Billy Joel, but people like that, the
Dr.
Eagles. I mean, it's like, and bands that I just found, unbearable. And then, of course, the punk thing starts. So Elvis and the Clash, for me, was the big, and probably Nick Lowe, but that was in punk. That was more power pop. But then by 1980, 81, it's dying again.
Right.
Because now they're bringing in synthesizers, which I detest, and it's become new wave. And so now the Replacements save it again.
Okay.
And the same thing. And then the Replacements die. Well, the Replacements sort of died for me with Don't Tell a Soul, which I just cannot stand as a record.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say that if that was the first record I had ever heard by the Replacements, I would have never listened to any. You couldn't.
No, I can relate to that because I mean, I guess was 85 or 80, maybe 86. The gap between basically Pleased to Meet Me and I Don't Tell a Soul was when I guess it was like 86 and I was 16 and people started introducing me to this stuff. And I was like, "No, this is great.
Yeah.
This is great." And I would, would go back through the catalog. Oh, this is even better. This is great. And then Don't Tell a Soul came out. And you're like, "What the hell happened, man?" It's like you show up to the party just as it's ending,
right.
And to some extent, the same thing with Husker Du,
Yeah. And then it's. I mean, my God, it's like there are a lot of bands that happen like Wilco. I know so many people that love Ghost Is Born. My God, I think A Ghost Is Born is possibly one of their 2 worst records.
So do you have a departure where you're like, I'm no longer?
No. I like some of the later stuff, but let's face it, it's Being There. It's the 3 Jay Bennett records.
Right.
Being There, Summer Teeth, and Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Ghost Is Born. There are 2 songs that I like on the record, and the rest I just.
I got the remaster release of Being There and AM. And AM still, a lot of people seem to really...
I like AM.
I like it too. So that was going to say.
AM would probably be my 4th favorite.
Seem to really dump on that record.
I know.
And I don't know if it was just kind of like, a Farrar Tweedy showdown and Farrar wins that round or something like that. But I found it on its own. Great. Now it's not as maybe boundary pushing.
But I really liked it a lot. I mean, I still do. And then I'm probably after those 4, my next favorite of the newer stuff would be Whole Love, which I thought was a good record.
Oh, okay.
But again, I thought in many cases they were trying to sound like Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
So based off of these bands, you think there's like, and I guess maybe to some extent Archers, but do you feel like there's like this sort of arc where it's like, okay, you kind of they start up and they're really hitting all cylinders. Can't really do much wrong, and then there's that one record that makes you reassess.
A lot of it has to do, though. Think about it. It's the Replacements. It's Bob's now gone.
Right.
So Bob. I mean, when you listen to that live record, you realize the new ones came out. You realize Bob was freaking brilliant. And
he's also that guy that the personality, the chemistry. Like maybe he's the pain in the ass,
Yeah.
but you need the pain in the ass.
I mean, the Archers. I mean, you go from their first song on their first record, Web in Front, to their last song on their last record, White Trash Heroes, and
so that's
they
why
are pretty freaking great.
So it's also you think the consistency is
I think the Archers
higher there.
Yeah, the Archers. It was short lived, of course. Though.
Right.
But I think they were, and then I mean, Crooked Finger. The first Crooked Fingers record is as good as I mean. Yeah, Bachman's one of the most underrated, I think, songwriters on the planet. Another one would be Matt Ryan. Those two guys are so underrated in terms of they should be filling the 4,000 and 5,000 seat arenas easily.
Well, would you blame that on, like, I guess what now everybody would blame it on the internet? I would blame it on sort of the collapse of the music industry after like Nirvana or something like that.
Either that or they're just too intelligent. Their songs are too smart.
They're not catering to the lowest common denominator kind of thing.
Well, it's just, I mean, I think it was, it might have been Jim DeRogatis who said it in Call Me Obsessed, is that, like, when your palate is used to McDonald's.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing with the Replacements, And also Lydia says this, and so then we go from Grant, of course, to Lydia.
Right.
Well, with
we're going to talk about talk about that too.
But like Lydia says in the film is that, and I think I even used this in the trailer. People are afraid of rock and roll. They say they like it, but most people are afraid of rock and roll. It's like, and I think the perfect example of that is when you have bands from Brooklyn like, Vampire Weekend, which is to me almost the death of rock and roll.
It's like the Gap ad of rock and roll.
It is, yes, or the iPod ad of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally can not be lamer. It's like, let's hold rock and roll up by the neck and slice its balls off with a butter knife. That's what Vampire Weekend did to rock and roll.
You get some pretty strong feelings about Vampire Weekend.
I wrote a blog post where it's like my dream would be to like literally do a documentary about them, but all we do is the crew just keeps showing up everywhere they are and says, "Why do you suck so much?" It's the only question we ask them.
And for like a hour and a half that they have to answer it repeatedly.
And they start drinking, and it gets on their nerves so much they actually start growing a pair of balls. They actually play with an out of tune guitar. They smash their synthesizers.
Well, when I listened to Vampire Weekend, it was like, yeah, these guys really seem to be trying to do something with Graceland here. Really, it's like a third, fourth generation Xerox copy of this. And, you can say what you will about Graceland, but a rock and roll record, I would not call it.
No. But then, and then they give birth to all, the, Fun Period and Foster the People and Foxygen and just these limp-ass, wimpy, horrible bands that, like, ugh. Yeah.
So well, I would say
you can see you can describe the hair raising on the back of my
having spent some time around the real rock and roll. It's inconvenient. It's a pain in the ass. It is sometimes illegal and off-putting.
Yeah.
And but you know what? You're really hanging in there for that 2.5 minutes or whatever.
Rock and roll is chaos. I mean, that's it's like if you're a band and every single night you're playing the same set and saying the same thing. The only thing you're changing is "Hello Cleveland," "Hello New Haven," whatever.
Right.
That ain't rock and roll. That's a Broadway show.
Right. So what's her when it came to that? I mean, what is her theory on why people hate rock and roll? Is it the same?
She thinks they're just afraid of it. It's like that it's like they want the Broadway show. They want to just like know what they're going to be getting. And with Lydia, I mean, being on the road with her and her band, it's like you can just never. The set changes all the time. The rants change all the time. I mean, it was the closest. Seeing them live at sometimes was the closest thing I can remember to the Replacements with Bob Stinson.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just the unpredictability of it.
Oh no, yeah, they are the real deal live. And even her when she's by herself, it is just. I mean, all of that aside, she's got one of the most amazing voices I've ever heard. I mean, she's an amazing. Her songs like speak to actual details in your life versus just a generic "I want to shake your booty now" kind of.
Yeah, no, I could really do. Yeah, I think the first thing I really heard of her was from the Day Trotter session, and I was really taken by her voice, and I think it was the way she pronounced cocaine, possibly too. I was like, this is different, you know.
Yeah.
The thing, what do you? I mean, do you consider that? I guess I noticed. I guess after like the Archers and that kind of generation, at least certainly around here in Carolina, people kind of. It wasn't like they went out of their way to avoid punk or indie or whatever. They transitioned into the alt country, what would be alt country, Whiskey Town and Six String Drag and the Two Dollar Pistols and stuff. Is that, you think she builds on that tradition, or she's coming from a rock and roll?
I think she's coming to, I think she's like traditional country by way of bands like the Replacements, and the Sex Pistols, and really. I mean, because there's like
cowpunk or whatever we used to do.
Yeah, whatever that, which is a strange. I never really heard that phrase before Lydia.
Really? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and, that was a thing for like Guadalcanal. Do you remember Guadalcanal?
Yeah.
Right? Jason the Scorchers.
Mm-hmm. That was okay.
That was cowpunk.
Yeah, I must have that phrase must have slipped me somehow.
Well, I lived in the South. You didn't.
Yes, that's it. And and the thing is, and not to mention, I mean, she's a big fan of pop. I mean, so it's like she's very well versed in all, every genre you can possibly imagine. Yeah. And, and I think that sort of comes out. And that's the thing too, is like you buy her record and every record's different. She's constantly evolving.
All right.
Which is also something, I mean, let's face it, people want, in no offense to this band, but people want like Journey. Why Journey was so big was because they had a slow song and a fast song.
The ballad?
And they just kept repeating them over and over again.
Yeah.
And they did it really well, and they sold a gazillion copies. And my wife loves Journey. I have no offense. No,
yeah. You like what you like. Yeah.
Sometimes we like that stuff. But that ain't Lydia,
No, I agree. I mean, that, it's like a comfort of the familiar with the Journey, and it's like Big Macs, like we were discussing about the Big Macs. Some days, you don't really want to be challenged. You don't.
Yep.
Some days you just want that comfort, and it's like, big old bowl of mac and cheese or something like that, and you want to take a nap.
And I think people a lot of times use music as just background stuff. So you don't want all of a sudden the background stuff to trigger like, oh my God, the time I was having that affair with somebody, or I fell in love with the wrong person, or this person broke my heart, and it's like, and it's really specific, and it's like, oh my God, now I have to think about that? That's terrible.
Well, and then of course, for me, with a live presentation, I always kind of waffle. I'm going to go with the Husker Replacements dichotomy here. I guess it's like the Beatles and the Stones for my generation or whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
But, so my thing was always like, if the Replacements had shown up and played one of their drunk-ass shows and I'd paid $10, I'd have been up on that stage taking a swing at somebody. But maybe that was the point in some ways. And whereas Husker Du was value for your dollar.
Yeah.
So I always kind of wondered, I thought, I love as much as I love the Replacements, I was always like, these guys seem kind of like they're really selfish pricks, And that may or may not be true, but there was that deal. They were provocative simply by being themselves.
Right.
I mean, Husker Du's expression was just different. But I think that's the thing with people, they want to go to the rock show. It's somewhere between a cocktail party and pure anarchy is what they're shooting for. And like a real rock show is going to be inconvenient. Like in terms of your expectation, in terms of, it's not like you have a living stereo in front of you.
Right. Well, I remember I went to a bunch of Replacement reunion shows, and the second one I saw was the Denver show. They only played 3 that year. The first year, Toronto, Chicago, and Denver, the Riot Fests. And in Denver, they closed the set with Paul on drums, and they're doing Hootenanny and a couple of bad covers with Tommy singing, and everyone's just like, what's this crap? And I'm like, it's the Replacements.
Yeah, exactly.
Effing moron.
Right. Well, that was, I remember, before they actually played. People were like, wow! And I'm like, be careful what you ask for, because you don't know what you're... This is like a roll of the dice kind of guy.
And that, to me, was my favorite ending of any show, because it was the Replacements.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I think, the one thing I find annoying, and one thing I did love about Husker Du, and I guess, we definitely don't have to worry about a Husker Du reunion now.
I don't know that we ever did.
I don't think so either. I think they're pretty much done with each other. Yeah. But the one thing is there's that narrative now for bands of our generation, the Replacements, Mission of Burma, the Pixies. You have that that new arc, I guess, where they hate each other's guts, and Coachella comes along and offers
yeah.
them, and man, especially, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, seeing some of these quote unquote legends having to struggle to pay their electric bill kind of thing.
Right.
You cannot really blame them.
Oh no, not at all, not at all.
But it does, I don't think it undervalues the artistic merit of their work, but it does sort of suddenly flip it a little bit.
And the thing is, the Replacements sounded great on those tours. I mean, and Dave Minahan, God bless him,
this is some big shoes to have to fill.
But he did a really good job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Bob, but he, just like Nels is brilliant. Nels is not Jay.
Right.
But he plays the parts and he brings his own thing to it, and they do a great job. It's funny, you mentioned the Beatles and the Stones. I don't know if you ever heard this from Grant, because he was saying, okay, so Husker Du would have been the Beatles, the Replacements would have been the Stones, and Grant was always
Paul McCartney.
Yeah, Grant was always really upset that I made him Paul McCartney.
Yeah. We had this discussion one time in a car. Me and him were driving, and he's like, it's an imperfect. He would go on about the numbers. Yeah, it's an imperfect comparison to a trio. Four of them, you can't, And I was like, I don't really, whatever.
Sorry, you're Paul. Sorry, Grant.
He would have to be simply because of the more wide-eyed, sunny pop element,
and also a prettier voice than
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's an element of musical intuitiveness probably that I would say both in McCartney's work and Grant's work that is not necessarily present in both Lennon and Moulds, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just that there's more of a weight placed on the personality and the message and trying to ram it through by any means possible.
Right.
I think that with Grant there was a certain amount of confidence in, like, I'm doing this for me. And that was the one thing that people definitely would probably point and say, well, look at the careers that they had. And I would say basically Grant moved at his own pace, and that's why those records sounded as natural as they do.
The thing is, I'm not a huge fan of Bob's solo work. I really like a lot of Grant's, but a lot of Bob's solo work sounds. Didn't we already hear this on Candy Apple Grey and Warehouse Songs and Stories? Ever since when he, as Grant says in the movie, he was listening to too much REM. But ever from those songs on Candy Apple Grey, it's just like I felt that it was just repeating that hardly getting over it kind of guitar riff,
the
over
angsty strum.
Yeah, over and over again. It's sounds like 12-string with a little bit of fuzz.
The one thing I'm not sure if I totally agree, but the one thing I would definitely say in agreement is that those 12-string guitars. I mean, I've played them, and it's just like you kind of get one thing out of it.
That's it.
I mean, you're going to sound kind of like the Byrds. You're going to have that. And whether or not you sound like the Byrds or the Byrds, that's an incidental thing, but the Byrds are just associated with it. It doesn't really matter at this point in terms of listening history.
Yep.
You're in that, you've got that hallmark, that tell or whatever, and people go to follow you in that. And I think to some extent with that, the guitar, the use of that guitar, then the way he tracks some stuff, it's kind of like the Ramones. You're kind of vulnerable to criticism of not really challenging them much. I will say this though, as much as I'm not necessarily a fan of a lot of that techno stuff, I really applaud that change.
The Bob's techno
stuff?
stuff?
Yeah. I will stand up on the roof of my house all day long and say, like, good for you, because as far as I'm concerned, that to me is what an artist should be doing, what the hell?
Well, that's what we're just talking about. It's like when people will make the changes. I mean, look at, my God, the last Grant album, which was just so massive. In scope.
Well, so you're I know you've finished the Lydia project, and
Lydia's just out on DVD as of it was Black Friday was released.
Okay,
and the extras are great. It's the best commentary.
Okay,
me, Lydia, and a bottle of bourbon.
Oh,
and
that's so. I mean, how loaded were you by the end of that?
I don't remember anything that we talked about.
Nice. So when you watch it, you're like, "Oh man."
I'm afraid to watch it. Okay. Yeah, I'm not watching. I'm not listening to the commentary. People have told me that it sounds like two old friends sitting around making fun of themselves. So I'm like, okay, that's good.
Yeah. It's not, and the next thing you know, you're face down. And,
because I think there are a lot. We just go on riffs and we're hardly talking about the movie. I think at times. So yeah.
So when do you expect for the Sarah Shook and the Disarmers documentary?
Well, her new album, as best as I know, her new album's out in the spring on Bloodshot. The new one called Years is the last title I heard. And so probably 6 months after that on DVD. But hopefully we'll start playing. We'll do some screenings and stuff. As soon as we got it locked up.
And so the next project now is Jay Bennett. Is that my understanding?
The next music project is, yeah.
So just for anybody that doesn't know, tell me a little bit about Jay Bennett.
Well, Jay was basically an integral part of Wilco during the recording of their 3 seminal albums, Being There, Summer Teeth, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. In fact, he co-wrote most of Summer Teeth and Yankee Hotel with Jeff Tweedy. And he was thrown out of the band. And
that's sort of the narrative of I Am Trying to Break Your Heart.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and also, I mean, everything that was going on in the recording of the record,
right? And
and they get dropped by their label. Right. They get signed by another label that's owned by the same parent company, and they're paid 3 times as much. It was that Sam Jones basically was given a gift from the filmmaking gods, saying we're going to give you all this wonderful drama because he had no idea when he started, And unfortunately, Jay goes on to a solo career, some actually very good songs, but never really catches on. And he is, I guess he needs a hip replacement surgery, and he ends up dying in his sleep from a pain patch that over-medicates him.
Ugh.
Yeah, and so it's a sad ending too. And most people when you talk about Jay, is everyone loved Jay. So and I just thought it was a story that needed to be told because so many people today don't even think of. You mentioned Jay Bennett. You mentioned I really prefer the Jay Bennett Wilco recordings, and people go who's Jay Bennett? It's like they don't even realize that.
You're getting in the weeds, buddy.
Yeah, you don't even realize that there was anyone before the current lineup.
Right,
so,
yeah.
And I just thought he was definitely someone who needed to be memorialized.
And I recall encountering him first in, was it Titanic Love Affair?
Yes.
So that was the first band I think I recall him being in, and I loved that band. Boy, they were so great, And I thought speaking of next replacements, there, and they had the Chris Mars artwork for that major label debut.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
So what's the working title of the Jay Bennett?
It's called Where Are You, Jay Bennett, which was basically came off this sign that his friends there was a reunion of a bunch of musicians, and he was supposed to be there, and he didn't show up, and people held up the sign, and someone took a picture of it, and not realizing that he was no longer with us. Yeah.
So now, I know with a lot of your projects, you've kind of done Kickstarter. Is that a Kickstarter project?
Oh yeah, we did a Kickstarter in September. Yes, yeah, and did really well. And I literally just got back from Tucson 2 days ago. And interviewing his mom for 2 days, and she's going through all the wonderful memorabilia and photo books and so forth.
How's that like at interviewing us? A deceased person's mom. I mean,
it's honestly. I mean, my interview style is just very conversational. So let's put it this: she was worried she didn't have anything to say. The first interview was 2.5 hours, and the next one was 2.5 hours. So she had plenty. Yeah, and it's just I find that if you just get people talking about their memories, they'll just go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now. Now we're going to talk about something separately, but looking at sort of these run of musical documentaries, what do you see in your filmography? How you've progressed? What similarities you see?
Well, I mean, in terms of, I obviously have. First off, I only do music docs on bands that I love,
right?
Because they would I remember my brother-in-law once said, why don't you do a music doc on a band that'll sell, Van Halen, and I said because I'd put a gun to my head.
Right. That would be a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, I one time hearing Jump, and I'd be ready to Jump.
Right.
And so, for me, I'm trying to capture the bands that I feel sort of represent what rock and roll really is, and almost like, making a document for future. So like, 20 years from now, you want to know what rock and roll was, you come back and you watch one of these films,
Okay.
and you can really see what it was. And it's, yeah, and I mean, it's making these in all of the films I do. It's really about passion.
Right.
You spend way too much time
On non-passionate things.
Yeah. Well, no, it spends way too much time to make a film
Right.
for it to be about something that doesn't drive you.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, because when I look at and consider what you've done, it definitely seems to be you're pro underdog.
Oh yeah.
In
Yeah.
terms of, I mean, even both Grant and the Replacements certainly had, I guess, pretty high profiles at one point.
Yeah.
But both of them, especially really out of all that, I guess Bob Mole really got kind of I guess the career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas the Replacements, even at their fame, that was short-lived. I'd say. They were. I mean, the reissues themselves. This vaunted band, the reissues, when you're supposed to be picking up that paycheck, did not sell very well, if I recall.
No.
And of course, you in today's scrappy music environment with Sarah and Lydia, I don't. That's uphill both ways instead of maybe uphill all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I think Sarah's got a built-in track for real country western fans, people who are like.
She's got that voice.
Yeah, all this crap that's on the radio is not country. It doesn't. I mean, most of it. It's like most time you listen to country music now, and it's like there are no steel guitars, there's no banjos. It's just produced pop.
Yeah. It's Leonard Skinner with a twang.
And so I think Sarah maybe could really tie into that, and I think I actually can see Lydia getting much bigger with each record. I mean, I think that she's got the pop sensibilities and that voice. I don't know. I think Lydia is a great shot of being huge.
You think?
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, well, it's just a much more optimistic view of the world than I do.
It's like sometimes, it's like I could just see her having that weird hit that catches on.
Oh, okay.
Because she's such a good pop songwriter.
Maybe like a Bobby Joe Gentry kind of situation where she has that one hit that everybody tries to figure out, and as well as this amazing discography.
Yeah, and I mean, and because she writes some beautiful. I mean, Heaven, which is on her record. And also, but it's also it's an acoustic version of Heaven is on the Record Store Day record, the soundtrack from the movie.
Oh, okay.
And two different versions of the same song, but it's just such a gorgeous melody, and really, and Sarah just has this. Sarah is what, like, if country music, John Howe Jr. says this in the film about country music, that like, how it has evolved until you get to Garth Brooks, and that was sort of the the downfall. That's when it became pop. And it's like I think Sarah is sort of the next step before that. When it was Waylon and the real stars of country music. That, and I think for her, she's like sort of that next step. Because lyrically, drinking water tonight because I drank all the whiskey this morning. Drank the whiskey this morning because my baby, she ain't coming back. That's as good a freaking opening line to a song as you can ask for.
Well, speaking of underdogs, the one thing I wanted to discuss separate from the music is your love of dogs and animal rights, and you made this movie called For the Love of Gucci.
A Dog Named Gucci.
A Dog Named Gucci.
Yeah, A Dog Named Gucci was we had done 3 rock docs for Replacements, Archers, Grant, and my wife and I started talking, like, there's obviously power in documentaries, so how can we use that to make the world a better place, so to speak?
Right.
And our passion is dogs. We never had kids.
Right.
And so we found this amazing story about a man who was just standing on his porch, and he sees this little dog being abused, rescues it, and the two of them become the face of animal abuse in the South and the dog lives for 16 years. And it was just a wonderful, heartwarming story about how we need to be the voice for animals. So yeah, that was in and that came out in 2016 on DVD.
Right.
So
now, I think we were having lunch earlier and just talking about how did you notice a distinct, changing your audience from moving from the rock doc to the pet doc?
Well, it is a completely different, but the animal rights world. I mean, you look at any pages on the internet, on Facebook that feature dogs and cats. It's like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers.
The odd couple ones are the ones I like.
Look at the silly cat videos on, cat plays the piano, that kind of thing. People love their animals. So it's just a very different, and possibly skewing a little older audience. Not that the Replacements fans.
Oh yeah, but to say, yeah,
and I'm one, so I can say they're older because
fans of a certain age.
Yeah, and now we're doing one called Seniors, which is
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, we're in the middle of that, and but I realized in Gucci one of the big things was so many people. Gucci does, despite the fact that it's about an abused animal, there's not abuse really shown in the film.
Right.
It's really about stepping up and saving and changing laws and how one person can really make a difference in the world. You can almost watch Gucci and like apply it to anything in terms of if you feel there's an injustice in the world, watch Gucci and you see how he did it and how he in Alabama, which obviously just was in the news a lot this past week.
I believe I heard something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and how even in a state like Alabama, you can change a law. So that's it's very much it's very much an educational film for anyone who wants to do something important. But Seniors, one of the things I learned was that I wanted to make sure there was never a hint of abuse. And I kept saying, I'm going to call this our happy animal film, which my wife was like, you can't call it that, until I started explaining to her.
Second stupidest idea.
She loved the idea of Seniors. She just didn't like happy film. And until she realized that what I wanted to do was, instead of showing the plight of elderly dogs in shelters and how they're like, looked over because people want puppies and stuff.
They're uncute.
Instead of doing that, show how cute they are. Show them out of the shelters. Show them that how intelligent they are, how vibrant they are, and how much easier they are to deal with. And so that's what the film is, more of a celebration of older dogs through the eyes of one Chaser, the smartest dog in the world, who's that border collie in South Carolina who's been on Anderson Cooper and 60 Minutes. And, the dog is frighteningly smart. The Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary in just outside of Nashville, which is a retirement home for dogs, which is the coolest place in the world. It's where I watched the eclipse with 115 elderly dogs.
Oh, okay.
Which was a lot of fun. I had to yell at a few to put their glasses on, but and then and sort of the narrative that ties it all together is a photographer named Jane Klonsky from Vermont, who has a book called Unconditional, where she goes around and takes pictures of people all over the world with their elderly dogs, and so she's also shooting. We see her shooting Chaser. We see her shooting Leo, who's sort of the rock star of the sanctuary. And it really is just this joyous film about how much these dogs still have to offer. So instead of saying, oh, look at these poor dogs in the shelter, you should do something, what I'm saying is, look how great these dogs are, and hopefully planting the seed that when you go to the shelter, you're like, oh, wait, there's that dog. It might be 8 years old, but look, he looks cute.
Something speaking to me.
Hopefully, so we're doing that. One of the other movies we're doing is, you talk about passion. This is the longest project. I started this at the same time I started Color Me Obsessed.
Oh, okay.
It's called Pizza Love Story. In New Haven, forget Yale, forget anything else in New Haven. We are known for three things: Sally's, Pepe's, and Modern. The only three pizza places on the planet.
Okay.
If you were to look up the Daily Meal, it's a national food website that ranks the best pizza in the country every year, 100 best pies. This year we got number 1, 3, and 11.
You're not competitive at all, are you, Grandma?
And think about our population is 1% of New York City. And yet we got numbers 1, 3, and 11. So these are pies that are like, unlike, like I've seen people literally take a bite and their eyes roll back in their head, like you see like in Train Spotting when people would shoot up heroin. That is what these pies are like. And I'm not.
You're not. So you're not going to go with Famous Ray or whatever. What's the New York pizza?
No, New York's pizza is terrible. It's like no, it's not as bad as the Midwest and Chicago. Chicago.
Oh man, you are just savaging people.
Chicago,
now.
honestly,
the deep dish. You're not gonna go for the deep dish.
Or the thin. I went to what was supposed to be the 4 best pizza places in Chicago, and I literally left Chicago feeling pity for these people. Like I literally felt they were like. I mean, they might as well have been like big-eyed homeless kids living in Bangladesh in the 70s with flies around them. That's how much
like a Dickensian cruelty going on.
They had no idea what pizza was. And I mean, if they consider this good pizza, it is just, yeah.
Man,
I shudder at the thought.
So
of
what's the premise of the film besides you love pizza?
It's about these. It's the history of these 3 pizza places, but they're also ridiculously old. The youngest is from 1938. So they're 3 of the 4 oldest pizza places in existence today. In the country. And Bricka, and I'm not joking. I interviewed people in line. We're in New Haven. We have people who've driven 5 hours from Philadelphia to come up, wait 2 hours in line to get a pizza, wait another hour inside to get their pizza and eat it, and then drive back to Philadelphia. That's how crazy this is.
That is crazy.
It's Sally's. When there were times when we would go to Sally's on a Saturday night, we get there at 7 o'clock, get in at 10, wait another hour to an hour and a half for the pie.
That's you got commitment then to do that. I would be like, look, it's I've been here for 15 minutes. I'm out of here.
It's once you take a bite, it is
okay.
Just
so when I come next time I come to New Haven, I will make sure.
And with me, you don't have to wait in any line.
Oh well, so everybody should go.
Yeah.
All right, my new best friend. Yes. Everybody. All right. Well, thanks so much, Gorman. Really appreciate you.
Oh my God, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
It looked like we were dancing. We were hiding our pain in patterns on the floor. We held each other like we were lovers, although we lost that privilege many years before. I know that once held love's riches, but now inside we're the poorest of the poor. I lost you on that familiar stretch of highway. I could have sworn I'd never driven down before. And love will never be the same under compassion's rusted remains. When confusion calls my name and even memories won't explain, I feel nothing. I know you could have tried to save me, but you never really tried to understand my pain. Knew right then the unspeakable would happen. We'd never have to speak so spitefully again. What was now hatred spilled out onto the darkness, whereas young lovers we parked and dreamt of what would be. Imagined futures that would never come, when the present pacified the passion out of me. And if you were here, you would hear me lie and say I never meant for you to die. When I held you tight that one last time, and your salvation became mine, I knew that finally you would feel what I always knew was all too real. We both felt nothing.